Get ready for the next arena. What's going on, YouTube? This is D-Rec here once again with Argo, bringing back another round of Union Arena. This time we're going to be doing some commentary to cover the fight. We've got a match between the new Sword Art Online. We have Blue Kirito Asuna on the left, piloted by myself. And on the right, I have my buddy Mark here. He's going to be piloting Purple Geass. That's going to be the Gurren Gawain engine there. And I'm going to be kicking things off on the left here, starting off with the Yui. Now, I really like Blue Kirito Asuna just because it's a lot like the Tanjiro Nezuko build, but I think it is better in a lot of different facets in the way that it's able to multi-attack. A lot of that multi-attacking is much more protective of critical pieces, as you'll see later on in this match. It's much more piece specific, but it's more protective of the more critical pieces of the combos that you'll be able to do going into the mid to late game there once you get the 4-drop or the 5-drop Kirito out there, and then the Asuna, whether that's the trial deck Asuna that gets the impact from the plus 1k when you switch, or when you play the raid Asuna and then you do the switch, you get the impact just by having the Kirito on board, but then you also get the draw if the movement happens outside of the movement phase there. So we're going to be seeing some more of those combos there. We're going to see just how Purple Geass is going to be able to keep up. Purple Geass is really much more known for its control, does a lot of the negging of the power, and then once you get the power down to a certain point there, you're able to eliminate things with either the SR Gurren or you're forcing the block with the rare Gurren there. And it's going to come down to how aggressively Mark's going to be able to take care of a lot of my moving pieces in the front line there with the Gurrens and the combos with the Gawain there, as well as some of the other lower cost pieces like the 2-drop Zero that's going to allow you to minus 1,000 power from the front row. I'm not sure if he's still playing the 2 AP cost 4-drops, but those are also pretty critical for being able to set up hand properly as well as minusing power. So we're going to see some more of that going into this game. But right now we're still really much in the early game. I'm finally up to 3 AP points there, getting into my 3rd turn in this match here. So we're more or less going to be setting up to make sure we've got that line. We have that Kirito that comes from the trial deck there. That's going to allow us to move pieces from the energy lines of the front line. Really free way to move something outside of the movement phase there. And it just gives you a free attacker, so you're able to push more aggressively in the early game there. We're able to bounce back a little bit there with the Asuna sandwich to make sure we're doubling back on the AP, being able to extend some of our combos. So between this deck and I believe green Sinon Snipe, those are two of the more threatening decks coming out of this set. I see some play with the yellow goddesses, the Asuna, the Lifa, and the Sinon there. But I think it more or less just falls down to those two decks there being more of the aggressive decks that come out there. The Snipe is just a really great way at removal outside of using events like the wind sideline events there, like the specials. The Hekate is just really, really strong. But in this case, we're able to set up our combo there. We do use the extension with the AP restanding there to get the Kirito as well as the Asuna on board. That's going to give us 3 attacks this turn, and with no front line there to defend, we're going to get 3 attacks through straight away, unless he hits a special in any one of these attacks. No trigger on that second attack there. And we're going to go with the Yui, the nice little 1,000 or the 1,500k poke with the Yui, and then he's going to get the add to hand. So that's going to be 3 life right out of the gate. And our energy line is a little mishmash right now. We're back down to 3 energy generation there. But that's really the nature of Blue Kirito Asuna. There's a lot of mishmashing going around with the energy line there as you're switching between the front line and the energy line. So, and with a lot of the key pieces the deck runs, it can be a bit top heavy, especially with the trial deck Asuna and Kirito, as well as the set Asuna and Kirito, plus the special. You're running 20 plus 4s and 5s in the main deck there, comparable to what you'd be running in your lower cost line there, anywhere from 15 to 19. In this list, we are running I think about the same number of 0s and 1s and 2s up to where we're at with the 4s and the 5s there, just to kind of balance it out. But it can be a bit high roller, especially if you're seeing a lot of those high cost cards right away and you're not able to draw into those low cost cards. It's going to help you set up that energy line. That's why we play the Yui. The Yui is really solid for being able to help out with making sure that our energy line is well managed. You could be playing the 2 cost Kirito that generates 2 while active. I think that's definitely a really solid option if you're playing, 2 to 4 of those, depending on what your build is looking like there. But it's another way to get a Kirito name that's going to allow you to raid, as well as something that's going to help you generate energy on your preceding turn after you play. Obviously, this turn you play, it's going to be generating 1 energy. But getting into Mark's turn now, he's able to put out the 2-cost Lelouch there. That's going to be able to neg the power on the Asuna on the front line. And he's going to raid with the SR Gurren there. That's going to eliminate that Asuna on the front line there. So I'm going to have to reset up my line a little bit to be able to do my multi-attacking plays there. We hit the Yui on the defensive check from our life there. It's going to give us the extra draw. Then we're going to get right into our next turn there. And moving into our next turn here. Throughout the Kirito there. We're up to 4 energy generation right now. I do see the Trial Deck Asuna in the hand there. Unfortunate that it's not going to be able to do anything during this turn there, just because it comes in, again, rested there. But it is a raidable target. It does not have the raid tech, so if I wanted to at this point, I could definitely use the raid there to accelerate into another Asuna Kirito turn there, or I could leave it off on its own there. The 5k can be a bit more deadly in some instances there, but we are going to raid over the Trial Deck Asuna into the raid Asuna to get the additional impact right away, as well as the draw. And it really is a toss-up at certain instances, especially if you need the extra power. Let's say you're up against like a green 1-punch deck, right? Either that's green or that's yellow, and they have beefier frontline cards there. If you're playing against green, that's the Silver Fang or the King. You want to get that power to get over their base power threshold there to be able to deal impact damage. But in this instance, we're not having to worry about that too much there. That's going to be the end of my next turn there. We're only able to get the 2 attacks off. He blocks the 1 and then eats the other, and then the Yui is blocked by the SR Gurren there on the front line. So really getting into the way this matchup kind of plays out there. Again, Blue Kirito Asuna, in the same sense that Tanjiro Nezuko is very aggressive, minus the fact that the power is a little bit lower. I believe the Nezuko is a 35 that does power up, and you're never really without the Tanjiro, so you're never really without that 4k base power with the power bonus from her own effects. Mark's going to hit the special there, the eye special. He's going to tap 2, and then having the Lelouch on the board, that's going to give him 1 back. So he's able to get rid of the second Asuna, the raid Asuna there, dealing with the impact and the extra draw. Again, forcing me into another position where I have to put out another Asuna combo to make that Kirito live again. And the Kirito is still technically alive. It doesn't have to necessarily move itself. The activate main still allows you to move 2 different cards, one from the energy line and one from the front line, so you're able to play things out and then swap around. However, to get that first effect off on the front line there, you do need the Asuna, and there are a couple different options that this deck allows you to play with there. The 2-drop that comes as the 1-star hit there in the set, that also ends up being a really solid tech choice as a 3 or a 4 of. Some lists play 3, I like to play 4. The deck does play 12 different raidable targets for Asuna there if you're going to go with the raid Asuna. I like to have, even if I don't have the raid, the 2-drop and the 4-drop are both exceptionally good at being strong bodies that are able to push for that 4k. The raid, obviously the non-raid trial deck SR there coming in as a 5k with impact, and then the 2-drop being a 4k. The 4k is still threatening, especially to a board of raid targets on the front line there that you want to keep. If you're up against like green Sinon there, you want to keep the Sinon on the board. And if you have the Kirito, then the Kirito, it's a 5k base power. That's going to be your safe bet to being able to get around those 4k attackers. But Mark's able to get that front line up to spec. He's got the Gawain there rated this turn, so that power line is going to be brought down a little bit on the front line there. And then he's got the Gurrens swinging in there. I checked the Kirito to add to hand, but unfortunately I don't have the energy to raid. And then we're going to hit the Yui and draw an additional card, and then we're going to take the last attack here with no defensive options. And we're going to hit the Starburst stream on that final attack there. Unfortunate it was only on the final attack. Definitely would have been better on the second attack there, but we take specials where we can get them. That's going to get rid of the Gawain.
We all know luck runs.
We're going to get rid of that Gawain there. That's going to prevent him from being able to swing over my smaller bodies there, which might be a bit more critical in the late game if I'm running out of hand resources to be able to make those Kirito Asuna columns happen. So getting back into my turn, my next turn here, I'm going to push the Kirito up, and it's really the basis combo for Kirito Asuna is if you have the 5-drop on the board, it'll always be on your energy line at the end of your turn once you finalize your combos, so you're always going to run the risk of losing your Asunas. But having the Kirito on the back, you can bring it up in the next turn there, and with the constant switching, as long as your energy line is in a really solid spot, again, having something like the Yui or the 2 energy generating Kirito, the while active, if you have that on your back line there, that's going to help you set up the 3-drop Kirito generating 2 energy right from the rip. Right there, we play it right there. That's going to give us our 4 energy right off the bat. We're going to move the unrated base Kirito there, and then we're going to play the Asuna from the back line. And with our last AP, we'll hit the Starburst stream once again. We're going to get rid of the SR Gurren there. Neither of them are really threatening targets at this stage in the game. However, I was being nice and I wanted to let him keep the shiny Gurren on the board there, so. Trying to be sportsmanlike in this day and age. I know, I get it. And sometimes you win, sometimes you lose a little bit, but you know, once you get to those level 2 events and it starts getting a bit more technical, start encountering a bit more complex play. You want to be a bit more on the nose with some of the rules and some of the way you interact with your plays. He's going to hit the active trigger that's going to block the last Kirito there. Either way, it wouldn't have mattered too much. That 0-drop Kirito there wasn't going to get through one way or the other, but you hate to see it one way or the other. And now we're tied, almost tied up. I'm ahead by 1 life here while he's at 2. He's at a decent sized hand. We're going to kind of see what he can put out here to come back a little bit. He's going to drop the C2 to draw an additional card. He's generating 4 energy right now. Decent spot, but he needs 1 more to be able to get another Gurren out if he has another Gurren in hand. He's going to drop the 2 energy generating Kallen there. He's going to raid once again into the force block Gurren. It's going to force the block with the impact. We're going to block with the unrated Kirito there. Taking the 1, no defensive check off of life. Tied up now 2-2. We could block this, but again, part of the combo with Kirito is being able to keep him alive as long as possible. We hit the active trigger a little too late, unfortunately. We wanted to see that on the first check instead of the second check, but sometimes that is just the luck of the draw. And in some instances there, if you're playing green or even yellow, a lot of those decks unfortunately don't run as many trigger effects in life, which can be a bit detrimental. It's one of the cons that people talk about when it comes to this game is the lack of consistent trigger checking out of life and some of the interactions that can come up there. Some of the people I play with at my locals there, they talk about the final, the way that it works there as an only check on final life if it is the final life, which if you do hit it, it is a wonderful feeling to be able to check the final on final damage. But it definitely is less than desirable. It's good for obviously the AP restanding when you have it in hand, but I think that there's definitely some qualms about the way some of the trigger effects do work and the consistency of triggers that exist in the deck as compared to other games like One Piece or Digimon. But such is the nature of a game that is a Weiss competitor with the anime IP inspiration for the gameplay. We're really getting into the nitty-gritty of it here. The unfortunate turn of events, we're getting into the final stages of the game there and trying to push. This is really one of the big push turns, because after this, I don't believe there's any real way. Once you're at 1 life, it's really tough. No matter what deck you're playing, it's really tough to kind of survive. Unless you're playing a deck like maybe the Goddesses there, which play a lot of Nullify Impact. I think that's going to be the meta going into this tournament season as we run the end of Sword Art. We have a couple more weeks before we get into Black Clover. We have a lot of rare battles coming up back to back to back. We have, I believe it was Black Clover and then Full Metal Alchemist, or Black Clover and then Thousand Year Blood War Volume 2. We have a lot of sets coming up in the next couple to few weeks there. We want to be on point with what the meta is going to be looking like. I think that a deck like Goddesses that plays a lot of the Nullify Impact, or decks that are a bit on the slower side when it comes to some of the decks. Again, Blue Kirito Asuna is a really strong contender when it comes to multi-attacking and consistent multi-attacking. in addition to the impact that the Asuna can get there, either the raid or the trial deck there. And some other decks that run a lot of impact. Again, Purple Geass runs a lot of impact. I think that we're going to be seeing some more nullify impact coming into the meta once again there.
There's like one thing I am going to do if I can't figure this out. But if I can figure this out, I'd like to. I don't want to like roll.
I think at this point in the game, I'm trying to figure out how to get my front line set up. He has 2 bodies, so if I can get 4 bodies to the front line, that'll be pretty close to game. It's really going to come down to the wire if he does in fact have a final in the life there, and he did just tease his hand a little bit there, so he's in a really rough spot with the 2 zeros that he has in his hand, unfortunately. An unfortunate situation to be in this late in the game with limited raid options, no raid options in Mark's case. But the consideration is being able to get a full front line there. Now in this instance, obviously I could potentially just push up the whole back line and just call it a day. However, it runs the risk of, if I, again, end up running into a final in life on Mark's end there, and the last damage he checks is a final, then I'm in a pretty precarious situation. We want to be able to avoid being in a situation like that. The Gurins are no longer live, so that in that instance there, that's one less thing to worry about, the impact from the Gurins, unless he's able to top deck a Gurin there, and then he gets the impact. That's a really dangerous, again, situation to be in at 1 life remaining, and all it comes down to is 1 card that generates the impact +1 or more, depending. But as I was saying before, it definitely looks like we're going to be getting into a more aggressive, and it's going to change the way we do deck building a little bit in this coming meta, where we're looking at decks that are able to swing in with impact. Blue Sukuna is still a very viable deck in this meta, which is crazy to think. The 3rd IP to come out in this game, and it's still a very much relevant IP in the meta game. You still see some Hunter x Hunter running around. I know a lot of people like playing Kurapika. I think Sinon, Green Sinon in Sword Art is just a better version of Kurapika if you go back to at the beginning of the Union Arena IP's launch there. But I think we're finally getting into it. Looks like in this instance, I'm going to commit 2 from the back line there. So that's 4 energy off of my energy line. I'm now only generating 1 energy. And we put the Asuna in the front, and then we just switch the Asuna there. And main reason for that is to generate the extra power. We now have 2 attackers that are swinging in for 4k. So he either forces the block from the Gurins, or he just eats them. And then he blocks the other 2. But it's going to come down to if he's able to see a final. He hits a draw off of the 2 Purple Lelouch. We're going to swing in with the Asuna for 4. And it's going to come down to if he wants to block this or if he wants to take this. If he does block this, he does lose a body on his front line, so he's going to take it, and unfortunate, no final. He hits the color trigger instead. Thanks again for watching, guys. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for future content. Leave a comment down below if you prefer the commentary style of today's video for future videos for Union Arena, or if you prefer no commentary for our Union Arena content there going forward. But until next time, guys, I will see you in the next video.